This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. So it's 7:42 on a Wednesday morning, and there's a guy standing at his kitchen counter losing a fight with two school lunches at the same time. Let's call him Marcus. He's got a Ziploc bag in his teeth, a milk jug in one hand, and he's frantically trying to get two kids out the door so they don't miss the bus. Marcus isn't one real guy. He's a lot of your patients rolled into one, and he's sitting in your files right now under a bunch of different names. 14 months ago, Marcus was in your chair. He had a great exam, bought new glasses, paid in full, and left happy. Somebody at the desk said, "Hey, see you next year." And Marcus said, "Absolutely." So this morning, right in the middle of all that chaos, his phone buzzes. It's your recall text, and honestly, it's a good one. His name's spelled right. There's a booking link. It came at a decent hour. Your system did exactly what you pay it to do. Marcus glances at it over the milk jug, thinks, "Yeah, I need to do that," and swipes it away to check if soccer practice is still on tonight. Nobody failed here. The text was right. The timing was fine. Marcus genuinely likes your office. He just also likes his kids, and it's 7:42. Now come back to your building. Same morning, 9:40. Lane 2 is sitting empty. The 9:40 booked 3 weeks ago and didn't show. Your front desk calls, leaves a nice voicemail, offers to rebook. There's a chart note, there's a hole in the morning, and everybody in the building can feel it. Okay, so here's my question, and I want you to actually answer it before I give you mine. Across this country, out of every 10 patients who book an eye exam, how many actually show up and sit in the chair? Say a number out loud. In the car, between patients, wherever you are. Most owners say 9.5, maybe 9. You remember the holes, there weren't many, and your patients love you. I built this episode planning to hit you with the real number right here. Then I went looking, and I found something weirder. There's a trade magazine quoting a reminder software company that puts the average US optometric practice at about 25%. My own team's guide for eye care practices puts optometry between 15 and 25. Our benchmark report for the big multi-location groups, most of them dental, says 12 to 18, best offices under 8. There's a DSO benchmark in that same library that says 7.4, and the academic outpatient research runs 23 to almost 34. Line those up for a second. The smallest and the biggest are more than 4 times apart. 3 of them are on my own company's website, and they don't even agree with each other. And they're not counting the same patients. The biggest number is all of outpatient medicine. The smallest 2 are dental groups. Eye care sits in the middle, 15 to 25, with the scary one right at the ceiling. So whatever number you just said, I can't tell you you're wrong. Nobody can. The profession that measures eye pressure to the millimeter doesn't have a no-show rate. It has a shrug with a decimal point. Think about why that is. If practices totaled missed appointments the way they total collections, we'd have settled on one number a long time ago. Instead, every office feels its own holes, rounds them down, and moves on. A number nobody totals never gets to be a fact. And that whole disputed stack, 7 to 34, is only counting one kind of no-show, the kind you can see. The 940 left a hole you could see, a chart note, a voicemail trail, a line on a report. She's the visible kind, and she's the smaller kind. Marcus is the other kind. He no-showed an appointment that never existed. No slot went empty because none ever got booked. No report will ever contain him. Your schedule looks exactly as full without him as it would have looked with him. Your practice management system has a report for the patient who breaks a promise. It has nothing at all for the patient who never makes one. And hold on to Marcus, because there are people out there who walk into practices like yours and put a dollar figure on every Marcus in the filing system. One of them has been on this show. Let's get into it. This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week we explore the journey of practice ownership and leadership in optometry. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. So a while back, I sat down with Dr. Bethany Fishbein. She runs the Power Practice Consultancy, and she and her partners do something most owners never even think about. They buy what she calls warm starts, practices in decline, an owner who got sick or started winding down, and there are still active patients sitting in the files. Somebody cold started that practice decades ago, named it, grew it, put kids through college on it, and now it's a fixer-upper, priced like one. I asked her what she looks for when she walks into one of these practices. Listen to what she sees. This is her from episode 98.
To the financials and the metrics of the business. I don't know that there's a break point where I would say, 601,000 is an acquisition and 598,000 is a warm start. I'm looking, when I look at these, primarily at cash flow, and I know we're going to get into how to value a warm start and determine what you'd be willing to pay for it. But you're looking for kind of huge, visible opportunity. Maybe a practice hasn't been billing up, they haven't been up to date with their billing. Maybe they've been billing, but very minimally, kind of missing opportunities to do more. Maybe this is a doctor who's not fully comfortable with medical care and they're referring out everything except insurance routine eye exams. Maybe they're not taking advantage of the technology like wide angle retinal photos and things like that. So where you can see big opportunity, and then on the other side, where you're seeing less than ideal financials. And this is where it kind of goes against what you think about buying a business. Why would I buy something that's not successful? Right? And banks will encourage you to think like that. Why would you buy a machine that's not generating money? But to me, a warm start is one that could so easily start generating money if the right.
Everything she just listed is sitting in plain sight, visible to her and the owners standing in the same building, looking at the same numbers and can't see any of it. I'm going to leave Bethany right there, seeing money everywhere in somebody else's practice. We're coming back to her because what she prices is exactly what you and I are about to count. Let's start with the no-show you can already see, because that one shows up on your reports. The way most of us think about it, no-shows are an annoyance. We send the text, we figure we run maybe 5%, and the real money problem is new patients. And that thinking right there is why the answer to a soft schedule is always a marketing budget. So take a 3-lane practice, 1 full-time doctor, some associate coverage, 60 booked exam slots a week, not a monster office, a normal Tuesday times 5. Now what rate should we use? 25% would cost this practice 15 empty slots a week. Even the friendliest number out there, that DSO 7.4 costs 4.5. I'm going to go lower than all of them. Charge that practice 10%. And hear me say this clearly, 10% is an assumption, not a statistic. It sits below the floor of every optometry specific figure in print. If your real rate beats it, you're beating every published estimate for your own profession. And notice, the only way you could actually prove that is to total it. Hold that thought. 10% of 60 is 6 empty slots a week. My team's published number for 1 empty chair is $175 in lost revenue. And honestly, that number is polite. The national average revenue for a completed exam visit runs around $285 once optical's in the picture. At the polite number, 6 slots, $175 each, 50 operating weeks, that comes out to about $52,000 a year. And this is an illustration for a 60 slot practice. Swap in your own slot count, your own rate, your own revenue per chair before you believe any dollar figure. The point survives the swap. Every one of those dollars had already done the hardest thing in practice growth. It called you and it booked. All it had to do was show up. That's the small leak. Because the visible no-show has one enormous thing going for her. She was on the schedule. The system knew to miss her. Now let's count the patients the system never knew to miss. That 3-lane practice completes roughly 2,700 exams a year. Annual recall. So every one of those people is supposed to come back. The marketing's done. The trust is built. They literally told you, see you next year. So how many actually come back? I went looking for a clean industry number, and I'll be straight with you. I didn't find one I trust enough to say on tape. 30% never return, 60% buy their next glasses somewhere else. Those numbers float around online, and none of them trace back to a study I could put in the show notes. At the end of this episode, I'll show you how to pull your real number instead. But let me show you the shape of it with an assumption I'm saying out loud. Suppose 15% of last year's patients drift, not leave angry. Drift the way Marcus drifted, one swipe text at a time. 15% of 2,700 is about 400 patients. At $285 of average visit revenue, that's about $115,000 of exams that never got booked. And with roughly 6 in 10 exam patients normally buying their eyewear from you, the optical, you lose rides on top of that. 15% is my assumption, not a finding. Run it at 10, run it at 20, the shape doesn't change. And notice what that $115,000 did to your reports this year. Nothing. Not one empty slot, not one no-show flag. The book stayed full because a full book and a full practice are not the same thing. There's one more hole, and this one we've actually measured. When the recall lands and the patient actually calls to book, optometry groups answer somewhere between 75 and 80% of their calls. And of the callers who don't get through, the research my team cites from Kiona Health says about 85% never try again. So roughly 1 in 5 of the patients who tried to come back never got through. And most of them are not going to call again. The 10% from earlier and this 15% are both my assumptions, and the 175 and the answer rates are my own company's published figures. You should weigh all of it accordingly. So why does nobody total this? Owners aren't lazy, and you're not bad at arithmetic. You solve for unknowns all day. Here's what's actually happening. The morning Marcus swiped that text, your practice lost, $400 of future revenue? No responsible adult stops their Tuesday for that, and no single day ever loses more. There's no Marcus Monday. One patient at a time never feels big enough to stop the day, and the loss leaves almost no evidence. A broken OCT announces itself. This never does. Meanwhile, the schedule heals itself in the worst possible way. Lost recalls loosen up the book absorbs walk-ins and quick follow-ups. The days still feel busy, and busy feels like healthy. You can be at capacity and shrinking at the same time. Then when the shrink finally surfaces, a soft quarter, optical drifting down, it shows up with no return address. So the owner reaches for the visible explanation. We need to do something about marketing, and the marketing pours new strangers into the same building that's quietly losing the patients it already had. That's the expensive way to stand still. Go back to 742 in Marcus's kitchen. Whose job was it to catch him? Nobody's. That's the point. The text did its job. Marcus is a good guy with a full morning. There's no villain anywhere in this story. And that's exactly why it never gets fixed. Problems with villains get meetings. Problems with milk jugs get nothing. Now, if you think the drifted patients are just gone, this next number is the reason I recorded this episode. My company ran a reactivation campaign for a 12-location optometry group. Patients 18 months or more since their last visit. The charts every practice writes off. That campaign recovered about $312,000 in booked revenue. But that's not the number. When those dormant patients booked, they got the full treatment. Confirmation at booking, a reminder 3 days out, 1 day out, same day, and a call ahead for the high-value visits. Their show rate was 93%. The network's average for its regular, active, loyal patients, 82. The patients everybody had given up on outshowed the patients everybody was counting on. By 11 points. That should be backwards, right? If drifted patients drift because they don't care, they should no-show worse than the loyal book, not better. This is my own client data, one group, not a peer-reviewed study, so weigh it that way. But the direction is the lesson. Those patients were never flaky. They were never properly asked. The distance between a dormant chart and a 93% show rate wasn't a better patient. It was a better follow-up system run by staff the practice already had. Which brings me back to Bethany Fishbein, standing in that declining practice. You can now say precisely what she's looking at. the billing that went quiet, the capture rate nobody watched, and the recall list years deep of patients who made no promise, broke no promise, and just stopped being asked. Every warm start on the market is a building full of Marcuses plus a doctor who never totaled them. And when the totaling finally happens, it doesn't happen at your desk. It happens at the closing table. Here's Bethany again on what those years of leaking turn into when her group writes the check.
Also, we've bought practices that do not have the top line revenue to sustain the doctor. So these are ones that if we put a doctor in and we keep running the way this practice is running, we are not going to be successful. We're going to be losing cash from day one. So because of that, the purchase price reflects that smallness of the business. And so I'm guessing the pricing that we've been able to pay for the practices is much lower than a $600,000 practice where there's, kind of enough revenue to guarantee that you're going to be able to pay the doctor right away. And so there's a little bit of risk tolerance. So the ones that I'm attracted to are 250,000, 300,000, 350, maybe, knowing that just like a cold start, if you open a cold start office and you don't do anything and you just sit there and wait, you're not going to be successful. If you do things, you can make that a smashing success. To me, a $250,000, $300,000 existing revenue base just kind of gives a run.
That's why Marcus and Bethany are in the same episode. That lost revenue doesn't go away. Somebody totals it eventually. The only question is who and at what price. Total it yourself this month and it's a to-do list, recoverable at retail by the staff you already have. Let a buyer total it at your closing table and it's a discount. Every warm start out there used to be somebody's empire, and the decline didn't start the year the owner got sick. It started decades earlier at 7:42 on a Wednesday, one swipe text at a time in a practice where the schedule still looked full. So here's what to do about it. 3 things, and none of them involve hiring anybody. 1. Book the next exam before this year's patient leaves the building. Your dentist has been running this play on you for 20 years. Steal it. Next August, Marcus doesn't need to remember anything because the appointment already exists, and the conversation happens at your checkout counter where you have a 100% answer rate. It's worth testing in your own office and track one number at the desk, the share of today's patients who left with next year's exam booked. 2. Run the same reminder sequence for everybody. Confirmation at booking, 48 hours out, 24 hours out, same day for the expensive visits. This is what the 93% actually proves. Those reactivated patients showed up because the follow-up never let go. Practices running consistent reminder systems get no-show rates under 5%. And the top reason patients miss in MGMA's survey data? About a third simply forgot. Software fixes forgot. 3. Run the 13-month report every week and give one person ownership of it. Every patient whose last exam is 13 or more months back with no future appointment. Then a boring cadence. A text 30 days before due, again at 14, again at 7. A call for the non-responders through 30 days past due. 30 minutes a day at the front desk. That 12 location group didn't add a single employee to recover the $312,000. They added a list and an owner for the list. Then measure exactly one thing. Open your system and count the patients whose last exam was more than 13 months ago, who have nothing on the books. That's your 13-month number. It's the invisible half of your no-show math, and it's the first thing a buyer like Bethany prices when she walks through your door. Pull it once. Put it on the whiteboard in the break room. Make it the number the whole building gets to shrink. But let me land this where it started. Nothing in this episode asked you to become a better doctor. The exam was never the problem. The 3 fixes are a booking habit, a software setting, and a weekly list with a name on it. You already know not to wait for a patient to feel a problem before you measure it. A patient can't feel their pressure rising, so you measure it. Do the same thing here. Run the report. Look at the number. Somebody is going to run the no-show math on your practice eventually. Run it yourself while it's still cheap. And hey, if you pull your 13-month number and want another set of eyes on it, that's what my team does all day for offices like yours. Reach out through mybcat.com and we'll look at the numbers with you. Thanks for listening. If this one hit, send it to the colleague who keeps saying they need to do something about marketing. Tell them to run the math first. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit mybcat.com. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.